Quin Snyder allegedly is the number one candidate to replace Greg Popovich in San Antonio. And I think we know already that Quin Snyder is one of the most controversial figures at the moment for the Utah Jazz. And a lot of Jazz fans saw this news last night and immediately went to, well, maybe we should let Quin go. That'd solve a lot of problems.
If he doesn't want to be here, go ahead and send him out.
What a jerk.
Yeah.
Jake, should the
Pack your shit.
Jazz...
Let's go.
Yeah, get out. Should the Jazz let Quin Snyder go to San Antonio?
No, you shouldn't let him go anywhere. I think that the Jazz are in a position that we all know they're in, which is, you're going to be reevaluating everything this summer once the season is over. But I'm never a big believer in letting a coach go who's taking you to the playoffs consistently, and I understand that, hey, we're not getting to where we want to go. It doesn't seem like we're progressing. But don't underappreciate the idea that you are a playoff team right now. There are a lot of teams in this league who are not playoff teams, who cannot say that, who do not have the luxury of just assuming that you're going to make it to the second round. So just appreciate what Quin is able to do with this current roster. However, if you're Quin Snyder, yeah, I do think that you should be open to all opportunities that are presented to you. And I do think that Quin Snyder would be a nice replacement to Greg Popovich. I think personality-wise, the way he coaches, the way he goes about it, to me is a nice fit as a successor of a legend. Now, if it's me, I don't want to be the guy that replaces Greg Pop. I want to be the guy that replaces the guy who replaced Greg Pop, I want to see what the Spurs do when they're the new look Spurs, because they haven't really been a problem since, the Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili days, right? So that's why I say, they're an okay team, but I'll be curious to see, let's say Quin did take that job, what the organization actually is willing to do.
Listen, I think there's a lot of conversation around whether or not Quin Snyder's done a good job with this team. Let me just answer that question now. Quin Snyder's an elite head coach. Quin Snyder's a very good head coach. I have been told repeatedly, and we've talked about it on the show, that they will reevaluate everything in the summer, and that includes Quin's status as the head coach of the Utah Jazz. But let's not mix things up. Quin Snyder is an elite head coach, and those guys don't grow on trees around the NBA. Quin Snyder's a guy that you want as your head coach, but the issues surrounding Quin in the Utah Jazz are he's been here 9 years. He's been here a long time. This is a guy that perhaps has lost the year of his team because I don't believe, and I could be wrong, we could go back and check the rosters. I actually think every player who was here on his first day is still here today because the roster...
It's tough,
it never never seems to change.
Y'all feel me?
I'm being a jerk now, but you get my point. Like, you've had the core of this roster together for a very long time now, and it seems like since Donovan got here, there hasn't been much turnover on this roster, and maybe that's not a product of who Quin is, but I think Quin may be tapped as far as ceiling with this group of guys. Now, if you do what we think they're going to do over the summer, which is completely change this roster and blow it up, Quin Snyder's probably not a bad guy to take all those new pieces and meld them together. I don't know. We'll see. But what I'm saying is, please don't overlook the quality of the job and the quality of the man that Quin Snyder has done and the quality of the man that he is. Because, Jake, I'm telling you, he's not an easy guy to replace.
Yeah, he's not. And I think that this summer obviously is going to be a good opportunity to replace him if that's what the front office wanted to do. But I also think, to your point, let's say that you brought in a bunch of new guys and you were rebuilding sort of or retooling around Donovan and Rudy. I mean, yeah, I think Quin Snyder's up for that challenge. But at the same time, you can't, again, it's this balance you have to find with players and coaches and really in any sport. I mean, you got to understand and respect the fact that Quin Snyder is going to take opportunities that are presented to him. However, I also think if you're the Utah Jazz, you got to understand who's available on the coaching market. So
absolutely,
if there's not a lot available, you're going to prioritize keeping Quin Snyder. But if there is a lot available, then maybe you'll be a little bit more flexible with it. So I just think at the end of the day, Quin Snyder is a quality head coach in this league. He is very much respected. I think he's done a great job dealing with the limitations and the issues and all the things that we've heard going on with this team. I mean, just think about just taking a second here and thinking about what Quin has had to endure. Let's go all the way back to the bubble days. You lose to the Nuggets. That wasn't easy to take. Then you lose to the Clippers. That wasn't easy to take. And then this season, you've got injuries and COVID, and Donovan and Rudy are fighting, and all this stuff going on this roster. So to me, when I look at what he's been tasked with, compare what he's got to work with to other teams and what other head coaches have. I mean, if Quinn was in Monty Williams' position, he'd probably be doing the same thing, right? Not to take anything away from Monty Williams, but again, when you have an option or when you have a roster that gives you options and flexibility and different ways to beat teams, and your players can do many different things at their position, that makes your job so much easier. So the fact that Quinn doesn't necessarily have that on this roster, really, outside of probably what Donovan and what Daniel House Jr. If we think about the most flexible players on the roster, I mean, those are the only two guys that can really do everything, So that's why I say Quinn's done a hell of a job.
Yeah.
But you have to respect the fact that he's going to be open to other opportunities.
Yeah, and I think, again, I would just say that I know that there's a lot of Jazz fans who are not happy with Quinn's performance, but I would also tell you that his hands, not to reiterate your point, I think a lot of times his hands have been tied behind his back. I mean, he had a very mediocre general manager in Dennis Lindsay for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
You had an ownership group here that did not try to win. They were more interested in selling cars and movie tickets than they were winning an NBA championship. Those are just the realities of where the Jazz were for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think since, LHM passed, it's been a very tall order to try and win games, and to do so in a financially sound manner was always more important than winning.
Yeah.
To make money and not to lose money and not to overspend and to be conservative was always more important than winning a championship. Ryan Smith has told many people, and just about anybody who will listen, his singular focus with the Utah Jazz is winning an NBA championship. So the dynamic has changed. Danny Ainge didn't come here to be mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see significant change this summer. My personal opinion is I think there's a chance, whether it's San Antonio or just attrition, that Quin Snyder is no longer the head coach of this team when we get to training camp next year.
Yeah.
I also think there's a very good chance that he is. I would say that there's probably a 70% chance he is the head coach. But I also think it's very difficult if you're Quin Snyder not to be the next Greg Popovich.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very close relationship. There's a mentee, relationship there.
Yeah.
I think Quinn would love to replace Greg Popovich, to be his heir apparent. That comes with a lot of honor. That comes with, that is an honor. That's the way that I would put it. I mean, Greg Popovich and Quin Snyder are very close. So that would not surprise me. And if you're the Jazz, you're going to let him go and do that. And I have no problem with that. But the thing that I caution you about as a Jazz fan, and I know that Quin Snyder takes a lot of heat on this show, he's a good head coach. I think he is. There are not a lot of head coaches in this league that I would pick over him.
He has flaws.
I mean,
though.
well, yeah,
you have to find
I
the
don't
middle
disagree
ground.
with that.
Yeah, I mean, he's.
But
he's,
who are you taking? Obviously, Steve Kerr, and I've said it repeatedly. I think Steve Kerr is the best head coach in the NBA right now.
Yeah, I would take Steve Kerr over him. I think the Monty Williams comparison is very close because the two teams are very close. But I think Monty Williams and his staff has done a better job developing what they have and working with what they have and turning what they have into more production. Because you look at the core of that team, Devin Booker, Cam Johnson, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, the only guy they really added to that mix that's like a bona fide star is Chris Paul, So I think they've done a great job developing. But I also think watching the Nets over the weekend, I really like what Steve Nash has done with this team. I mean, again, when I really encourage people, when you're talking about head coaches this time of year, look at what they've had to endure and all the nonsense they've had to deal with. Because, again, think of it this way. How much of a challenge is it to win an NBA basketball game if your roster's 100%? Everybody's there. You've got all your options available to you. It's difficult to win an NBA game. Like, let's not undersell that. And then, on top of that, you're adding vaccine status, and you're adding, COVID protocols, and you're adding this, and you're adding that. So when I look at what Steve Nash has had to deal with, I think I'd take him above Quinn. But again,
Really?
Yeah, I would, because I think that like yesterday we're watching this Nets-Knicks game, and it's a real tight game, and they're battling, and the Knicks are making the Nets' life difficult, and Kyrie's not playing, but he's sitting on the sideline in courtside seats, and the Knicks are doubling Kevin Durant, and the Nets don't really have an answer for it. Steve Nash calls a timeout, makes an adjustment, and all of a sudden they've got an answer for it. And that's what I'm talking about. Because when I think about Quin, what do we always hear about Quin? Well, his out of timeout stuff isn't great. He doesn't play the young guys. Even though he has started to play the young guys and more of the roster recently.
Yeah.
But for most of the season, he hasn't played the young guys. So there are some knocks on Quin Snyder. But again, I think that's where Steve Nash has done really well. Steve Nash has shown a willingness to play guys you wouldn't typically see and work with them and try to develop them. So that's why I would take Nash over Quin, but I don't want that to come off as Quin is some terrible head coach because he's a damn good head coach.
Well, I think Steve Kerr and the other guy that I would point to is Eric Spoelstra in Miami. I think those two are the two that I would definitively say that I would take over Quin Snyder. But, I mean, if you look up and down, that list, there's not
what
a
about
whole lot of...
Budenholzer in Milwaukee?
I like Bood. I don't know... I mean, he's a good head coach. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I just like Quin's edge a little more.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I mean, there's a couple other guys that might. I mean, I look at what's going on with Taylor Jenkins in Memphis, but Taylor's young.
Yep.
I don't think he has enough experience. I know that they have similar routes, but I think Quin's a more experienced coach who gets
definitely.
So I look at a couple of things like. Budenholzer's an interesting one. I mean, I look at Rick Carlisle in Indiana.
I would say Quin over Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle is the guy you hire because you want stability, not because you want to win.
Yeah, well, but he's got a championship in Dallas. I mean, he's a guy that.
How long ago was that? I mean, do you happen to have that?
Yeah,
that was
I
like
mean
10
that
years
was
ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's a long time ago.
And
but
I know, Quin doesn't have one, but I think. The thing that I struggle with is like, some of these guys that are coaching in the league have been in the league for like 20 years. Rick Carlisle being one of those guys. He's been around forever, man. I mean, that guy is a lifer in the league, and I think that Quin. The other dynamic with Quin here, to that point, is Quin's not just going to leave to go and coach Charlotte, let's say, or some run of the mill team. If Quin's going to leave. And go to the Spurs. He's only doing that because he wants to be the guy that replaces.
But he'd
Pop.
be the guy that'd go and replace, Coach K at Duke or Pop at San Antonio. Or I agree with you. I just think we put so much pressure and we put so much criticism on top of a guy like Quin Snyder. I think we don't take enough time to appreciate what the job that he's done. Now, are there a lot of moles on that face? Yeah. Like, hey, man. You might want to develop your young guys.
Yeah.
And we're seeing when Jared Butler plays more, he's having really good stretches. Now, he also makes huge mistakes.
Yeah.
But he's a young guy that's inexperienced, and it's good to see him getting more time.
Yeah.
I think tonight's a really interesting night for the Utah Jazz with the Milwaukee Bucks in town. I mean, you're convinced the Bucks are going to win this game by 178 points.
I just think the Bucks are a better team. I don't think there's a way to stop Giannis.
178.
I think honestly,
that'd be a blowout.
Yeah,
an NBA record.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a 15-point loss, honestly, because I think the Bucks are going to be at full strength. You're looking at guys like Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, obviously Giannis, but a guy nobody ever wants to talk about is Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen is a guy that's gritty and tough and will make your life difficult. So when I look at this matchup, I say, okay, great. Who's stopping Giannis, number one? But then number two, you tell me that Bogdanovich is going to slow down Chris Middleton, or that somehow Don versus Drew Holiday is going to work out well? Drew Holiday is a big physical guard and likes to play defense. So if you're not getting 30 out of Don, because I don't think you will, I think you'll get 20 to 25. And, God forbid Clarkson doesn't come off the bench for 45, let's say. I just don't see a path to victory in this particular one. I just think they're a better team. And that's okay. It's okay to say that sometimes. Like again, the OKCs and the New Orleans, those are teams that you should beat, and you should be pissed about if the Jazz lose to those teams. I'm 100% with that. But Milwaukee, they're a championship caliber club, dude. To me, they're just more quality than you are right now.
Yeah, I think the hard part for me in this matchup is whether Rudy plays or not. I mean, I just don't see how you defend the level of talent with this group of guys that the Jazz bring to the table. I mean, if you look at the way Chris Middleton's played recently, Giannis's mid-range game will be in full wide open because the Jazz don't defend well display tonight at the Vivint. I think it's very interesting that Lopez is back tonight. We'll see how many minutes he plays. But, I mean, top to bottom, the grit, the determination, the defense, the weaponry that Milwaukee brings to the floor night in and night out, I think is just superior to what the Jazz offer. Now, having said that, I think it's in Utah, which is, a home court advantage, the altitude. And I think the Jazz are a game team when it comes to the elite clubs in the NBA coming home. Yeah. I think this is going to be a much closer game than most people think, or it could be a 40-point win for the Bucks. Honest to God, that's who this team's been. The Jazz have been so Jekyll and Hyde. And there's nobody but Udoka Azubuike on the injury report.
Yeah.
So I would expect Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert to play tonight.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing is, the thing that I think this team is struggling with right now, is that it's taking Bogdanovich for 40 or Jordan Clarkson for 45 for this team to win, And that's the thing that's a little uncomfortable. I mean, again, while we're talking about Quinn and this roster, like, you got to find a way to be more balanced. You need 20 out of Bogey, 30 out of Don, 20 out of Rudy. Like, you need these guys to contribute at a reasonable level, and that's the thing that I think is tough. I mean, one night you're getting Clarkson for 45, but Bogdanovich has nothing because he was out, and then it's vice versa, and Bogey's got 40. Like, it just is. I don't know, man. It's just a really interesting time for this team. I'm not sitting here saying that they're struggling, but what it is taking for this team to win a game feels like a lot right now. It doesn't feel like it's real easy for them at this point.
Well, and I think the other thing that's interesting now is you look at this schedule and where the Jazz currently are. You're a half game up on Dallas, and Dallas got a very impressive win yesterday. At Boston. I mean, I by the way, why did Boston retire Kevin Garnett's number? Like, I know he won a championship there, but I mean, are you retiring? I wouldn't have retired his.
That's all I have to say.
Soda!
That's all I have to say.
Yeah, when Kevin Garnett won a championship with the Celtics and he yelled soda. But I look at the way the Jazz are playing right now. I mean, you're 42-25, and the thing that terrifies you is you're one of the worst defensive teams in the Western Conference as far as the playoff teams go. I mean, you look at the numbers that they're giving up. I mean, you're better than the T-Wolves and the Lakers. There's no doubt about that. Are you dying?
Dude, it's bad today.
What is going on with you?
I just go through these stretches. I woke up today. I had a weird wake up today. My phone was off the bed. It was like ringing like it was in the upside down. Like,
well, because you have like a 5XL king size, huge. I bang fat chicks on my size bed.
Yeah.
And so, wow, look at you. You're dying
dude,
over there.
My eyes are just dry as hell today. Yeah.
But you don't have enough room in your room.
Yeah, because to
have a nightstand.
Okay, quick side note. Not trying to derail the whole show with my eyes. Sorry about that. But, you're right. I have this huge bed that I intentionally bought because I wanted a big, comfortable bed that I could sleep really well on.
It just means that Pound Town is a little tight.
Yeah.
I really don't care if you think it's sus.
Yeah, I don't care if you guys think it's crazy, but, So my closet, the problem is my closet,
I'm sorry, your what?
My closet.
Your closet?
My closet in Boston, the doors swing open towards you. They're not like pocket doors or anything. So because my bed is so damn big, the doors, opening, they won't open if I have a nightstand. So my bed, and it's not a problem. 9 nights out of 10, it's not an issue. My phone just sits on my bed next to me.
How big is the garden?
What do you mean?
Well, where you plant your seed, the bed is your garden.
Right. It's a California king, dude.
Nothing?
No.
Engage me in my sexual innuendos.
Butthole.
Anyway. The point is, you need to grow up and get a nightstand.
I go through, so this morning I wake up and my eyes are all dried out. Yeah, it is what it is.
And as you can see, I'm going through some shit right now.
Yeah, it's a little sus that you smoked a bunch of weed before the show today.
Yeah.
All right, let's get your comments on the Jazz and Quin Snyder. By the way, real quick, what I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by your freaking eye drops.
For real.
Yeah, the Western Conference has now gotten really tight. You look at the Denver Nuggets are only 2 back of the Mavericks, who are only a half game back. Yeah. I mean, this is now, and again, I'm telling you, just hang on to the 4th spot. If the Jazz are in the 4th spot, they have a chance to win a playoff series.
This road trip coming up.
If they don't stay in the 4th spot and the Jazz fall to the 5th spot or the 6th spot, they're going out in the 1st round. I mean, they're going out in the 1st round. You don't want to see any of those top 3 teams.
Yeah.
You want nothing to do with a 3-6 matchup. I'm just telling you now. You want nothing to do with that. And I look at the schedule coming up, and I mean, guys, you have 3 weeks left in the season.
Mm-hmm.
The season's coming to an end. And you look at this Milwaukee, Chicago, LA Clippers, and then Saturday, you're going New York, Brooklyn, Boston, Charlotte, Dallas, LA.
Keep it real.
But then you get a break when you come home for the Lakers, Warriors, Grizzlies, Thunder, Suns, and then at Portland. I mean, so you're getting, luckily the Laker and the Laker game's at home, as is the Phoenix game, but you're at Golden State.
You should beat the Lakers.
You should pound the Lakers.
Yeah.
But how did that work out at Crypto.com?
Crypto.com E-Trade app.
Are you crying because the Jazz schedule is scary?
We're on to Cincinnati.
All right. Speaking of which, make sure you hit subscribe on this channel because we're giving away a PS5, and you guys have been amazing. That we are at, and I know this seems crazy, but that we are at 3,550 subscribers right now is insane. I mean, the amount of subscribers we've picked up on our YouTube channel is crazy. The numbers that we're doing on the audio podcast are amazing. Thank you so much for supporting this show. It's humbling how many people have really come on board the show, and that's why we do things like give away a PlayStation. That we're going to do that at 5,000. We started this at like 1,000 subs ago, and it's incredible how many we've picked up.
A meteoric rise.
Hit subscribe. You buy our 2 T-shirts, a merch, any merch purchase for $25. You know, like, hey, you get 5 entries for the PlayStation. Everybody else is 1.
Yep.
Also, if you're listening on the audio podcast and you want to win, just subscribe to our YouTube channel. Everything happens at themontyshow.com, MONTY, themontyshow.com. By the way, while you're listening to the show or watching the show, shop our Amazon links in the description below. We have some great stuff there. The masks we wear, the bars we eat, it's all good. Shop our affiliate links below. We appreciate that as well.